are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you once again on Locked On Texas Tech, emergency butt into your day edition on the Locked On Podcast Network with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Why are we intruding on the day? Well, it's because we've got the topic that never dies.
We love you, Mark Few. We love you.
Realignment to consider and love for Mark Few or others. Gonzaga related as yes, you might have seen to this point in the day or whenever you may be taking this episode in. Reporting far and wide, beginning with what I saw, Chris, from Brett McMurphy of the Action Network, that the Big 12 is, quote, seriously considering adding Gonzaga as a men's basketball member once again. Reporting suggesting 2024 or 2025 could be the year, again, basketball only, but now with a key component that Gonzaga would be willing to accept less revenue at the outset, similar to some of these other agreements we've seen announced between, say, the ACC and SMU. And some are indicating this could come to pass within the next 2 weeks. Now, men's basketball is the headliner. I shouldn't say basketball only because there's also thought of baseball, volleyball, I think men's and women's tennis as well. So a couple of outliers, and soccer as well. But Chris, the wheeling, the dealing never stops with Brett Yormark, man. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we all kind of buried this option. I think this is, make no mistake, I think that Gonzaga is kind of getting some. Okay, so let me just start from scratch here. I think this is going to happen. I think some people privately are going, "Oh, this is done." Again, I'm not saying that. I just have kind of heard, "Oh, this is done." I'll believe it when I see it, but I tend to think that where I'm getting that, that people are feeling like, "Oh yeah, this is the way it was reported. It's about to get pushed across the finish line here." I think we had all kind of buried it as a possibility just because it's like, all this realignment business. And then you got your dream scenario, according to Brett Yormark. And so UConn, Gonzaga, hey, kick rocks, gentlemen. Don't need to have you to the party. Our party is full. I think as the time has gone along here, I think Brett Yormark really trying to do some things to create a scenario to where they can be had, they want to be had, and then I think the more data that he has secured, along with, because here's what I think has happened. Gonzaga is going to maybe get what they want by joining this league, get more money, although it's not as much as they would have hoped for, but it is more. And with that, I think they're going to get to bring some of their other sports here too. Okay. I think that's probably a win for them. Whereas the Big 12 is probably saying, yeah, man, that baseball would be fun. But some of the other stuff, what this also does, there's a dynamic here that not that they are running the league by any means, but I think that, I think that there's probably a component of the Arizona schools and Utah and Colorado saying, this kind of is another partner out here that would make some sense for us in many ways with some of these other sports and all those things. So, but ultimately, what Brett Yormark is doing, I feel like I've talked in a big circle here, but this is what it's all about.
That's called podcasting, my friend.
To me, this is all about creating the most powerful basketball league you possibly can. No one can deny that Gonzaga would add to it. I think we would also want to say Gonzaga may find it tough sledding once they enter into this league. They are a brand. I think it's been reported some of the metrics out there and the dynamics that, it's like, man, Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, North Carolina, whatever, and then Gonzaga is right there as far as viewing, and it's like Gonzaga gets twice as many viewers than the average Big 12 game. I've seen all this data. But all this is doing, this is another team into what Brett Yormark is going to ultimately want to say and try to reinvent the way this is done here. And we've touched on this a little bit way back in the summer. He wants to take these media rights agreements and basically say, hey, folks, this is our basketball media rights agreement, and this is our football media rights agreement. They are now separate. I don't know where all the other sports factor into this deal, and do they fall under the football or the basketball umbrella? And I think he feels like I'll get more money for the league and in total by splitting them. So what does he want to do? He wants to make that basketball, product as strong as he possibly can. So whether he must feel pretty good about that scenario. Otherwise, he is not in any way entertaining the Zags from joining the Big 12. Because my questions are, how much money are they taking? Does this affect Texas Tech's money and everybody else's? How do you schedule with 17 teams, next year and going forward in a regular season? Are you going to expand to a 20-game conference schedule, which is what we've heard? And I'm all for that. That's kind of what you've been saying about football, Cowan. You want more, not less, league games. But get ready for conference basketball in December, if that is the case, because the calendar is the calendar. That NCAA tournament starts when it starts, and so you start getting in December for conference basketball. The other thing that I wonder is, does this mean you would entertain an 18th team to make it kind of well-rounded? And again, how much money does that work? So I have questions, but your conference tournament is going to last like a week long. I mean, you already went from one game on a Wednesday to finishing up on a Saturday. Now I think you've got a lot going on a Tuesday, a full Wednesday. But it would make the conference tournament with this men's side of it, quite the ticket, quite entertaining when you've got the likes of Arizona and Kansas, Gonzaga, and then whoever else wants to roll, like, Baylor and the Red Raiders and Iowa State and Kansas State, all who have been in the Final Four championship games or Elite Eight scenarios. It could be wild. But that's what it ultimately is all about, is getting a separate media rights agreement for men's basketball. And he is trying to best position the Big 12 to be able to do that. In, I guess, the next, 3 or 4 years, because it's kind of off into the distance. I believe, though, if you add the Zags, it's for next year, though. That's what I think.
There is a big risk for Gonzaga to really diminish their brand by challenging themselves in a way they haven't been challenged being in a league like this, Chris. And I know what some of the payoff could be and some monetary gain for what is at large a very small and not largely funded athletics department there for Gonzaga. But obviously the men's basketball program is a special one. But I wonder how you feel about this. I think some of the risk that maybe Gonzaga is willing to take on, I wonder if it has to do with the broad future of what college basketball or a college basketball postseason could look like. And with some thought of autonomous conference movement as far as some of the major players separating themselves from the minor players, if you're not at that table, where do you wind up? And Gonzaga right now, conference-wise, is not at that table. I know their brand is, but conference-wise, they're not there. So
yeah, the West Coast Conference.
Maybe that's a risk you want to take. You got to get into a league, and certainly the Big 12 is as good as it gets.
And it is as good as it gets. And I think it only, with Oklahoma and Texas out, the new schools in, I think your league got better. When you factor in the Houston edition and all the changes that have been made, I think it's deep, it's salty. I think Gonzaga only enhances that. And I do think that everybody's projecting. You're right. I think that you're kind of, whether it's a consultant or you're talking to folks in the industry or you're talking to TV people, whatever, Brett Yormark is projecting, the folks that run Gonzaga are projecting, the folks that are in charge of whether they want to hear Yormark's pitch on Gonzaga being into the league or not are projecting. And he's had to lay a lot of this out, and I think that's what was reported, is that these were conference meetings with, I think, a lot of the presidents and ADs separately on trying to basically say, here's what I want to do and here's why. because I've been told repeatedly. I mean, Gonzaga is a yes if they are, extended an offer. If that phone rings, they are picking it up and going, "What time do we show up?"
Yeah.
And I think at that point, the only hang up is okay. Well, how much revenue are we talking here? It's got to be worth our while, because if it's just they're not going to do the SMU to where they just say, "Hey, man, we were just thrilled to be here. You don't have to give us anything. I don't want a party favor. I don't need a meal. I don't need a beverage. I just am glad to be here. I'll stand in the corner for 9 years." I mean, Gonzaga's not going to do that, but yeah, they're going to take less overall, and I think they get to bring some of their other sports here too, which probably pleases everybody on that campus. And it's kind of a bit of a trade-off, I think. But I think the new 4 Pac-12 editions that you've added would be for it, because it kind of bridges the travel gap in some ways a little bit. I also think that it's interesting to note maybe there's something about to go down with Washington State and Oregon State with some of this other activity, and Brett Yormark is wanting to beat because if you reform the Pac-12, let's say, and you say the 2 Pac-12 schools, the Mountain West, they're going to absolutely call up Gonzaga and try to make something happen. And the Pac-12 has got a little money to make some things happen with, based on some of this litigation and everything, but they still are owed for college football playoff, for past NCAA tournaments, and all these things. They got some cash flowing. So I think that's also the timing is maybe been sped up a bit, and Yormark is saying, we need to do it. We need to do it quickly, and all those things. So I think there's a lot of dynamics flowing here, but I've exhausted my knowledge on the subject. But I do tend to think this goes down. I think it probably happens soon, and I think it's immediate on when they would join your league. So we'll see if that's right or not.
One thing we do know as far as a discount deal is concerned, Gonzaga does not have some type of pony slush fund. Shout out to Sherwood Blunt, puff, puff, pass, homie, like Southern Methodist does. So that's a totally different ball game as far as what they can afford to be discounted. But Chris, before we get out of here, and we don't have to talk about options, we'll get into some obvious options, I'm sure, in days and weeks to come. But a further addition, you already said it. You're not sitting at 17, are you?
Man, I tend to think you might.
Really?
I don't, because I think there's 2 schools of thought there. Either you absolutely are sitting at 17, or you got to get Gonzaga to say yes before you do. Because at some point, this is about revenue. And if the TV folks, and maybe Gonzaga is the one that you've got to get to say yes, and then you entertain, whether it's Creighton or UConn or St. Mary's, heck, I don't know.
Yeah.
Villanova. I really don't know where you would go on the next basketball only option, but it's only going to happen if it's worth a lot of money. And you're seeing a lot of this data reported today and rankings and all that, but you're not seeing any other school really attached there. And again, I'm willing to listen to it, because I'm like, okay, a 17-team league, how do you do a schedule there? How does that work? How do you make that? But it's all revenue based, and I don't know if UConn is wanting to really do it, and if they're not wanting to do it, I mean, who makes sense that brings revenue, or the TV folks are going, that's a brand, you got to get them. They move the needle big time. I don't know. So I'm willing to tell you that I think you may stay at 17 for a bit, but it's all about the Gonzaga yes or no,
Sure,
or yes or not. And if they give you the yes, then maybe we can go, okay, now what's happening? There's clearly a plan. He's already down the road on that. Whether we got to get a yes here, now we're good, or we got to get a yes here, then we can do this. So
right.
It's all about a separate media rights agreement, though, with your basketball only contract. Think of it like football with the NFL contract. The NBA has their separate contract, separate channels, separate money, separate times of the day, separate everything. And that's kind of what he's trying to do. And it's never really been done before with these leagues. Usually it's all of our inventory. You're buying it, you got it, but he's trying to kind of, seeing if he can't squeeze a little more out of these media rights folks.
This ain't the Raycom era anymore, baby. Brett Yormark has got a wall full of tacks with strings connecting each one and thoughts of Pepe Sylvia. He's always got the wheels turning. Let us know, do you like or dislike this idea in the YouTube comments? Would love to hear from you. Chris,
hey man,
thanks for
in your man Sherwood Blunt. I love the reference that of all the 30 for 30s that have been out there, of all the 30 for 30s, Pony Excess, and if you looked at the logo of it, Excess with the S's are dollar signs. Oh yeah. I mean, it is just absolute 80s TV gold.
Yes.
I mean, with what these people are doing. And now it's all legal. Every bit of it.
You're going Doc Holliday on me now. It's legal.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean,
he shows them the badge.
Yeah, unleash them, boys.
Yeah, he's like opens up the little.
We'll join a conference that's not going to pay us anything. Yeah. We got that cash, but I don't know about Gonzaga.
The beef's not with you, Holiday. Well, I beg to differ, sir.
All right, join us for Locked On Texas Tech Overtime to hear the rest of Chris Level's Doc Holliday. Maybe something that will actually start because that sounded pretty good. Chris, thanks for a little extra time here today to come on back around. And I guess we're talking Big 12 hoops because this is the universe that this is in, but Big 12 realignment possibly in general will continue, man. Thanks for the time.
We know he's a hoops guy. Happy to talk hoops anytime, man. Yormark will tell you, but he's wheeling and dealing behind the scenes, man. But enjoyed it. Kind of got dropped in our lap today, and but yeah, we take it, we run with it. That's right. So we'll see what happens.
That's right, and we're back in a football frame of mind coming up on the other side. So join us then. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts, so you never miss an episode. And be right back here for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.